welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks, a show where we debate takes so hot that they'd melt a planet with twin suns. My name is Brody, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts Amanda and Christian as we attempt to discover what story is truly the best from a galaxy far, far away. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing ranks and hot takes from The Mandalorian Season 3, Chapter 6, Guns for Hire. By the end of this episode, we'll have a definitive answer on where this piece of Star Wars content ranks amongst the rest. With that, let's get this show started.
Do you want to quickly re-say Chapter 22 instead of Chapter 6?
Well, here's the real truth, everyone. We're in London right now, and we're really tired. We're really tired. So hopefully you stuck around for that intro, because no, it's not Chapter 6. But we did just finish what almost feels like 22 days of Star Wars celebration. It's been 4. It's been real. My voice is gone. We had a lot of good karaoke, a lot of good fun. We did a lot of amazing interviews. But before we keep going and talking about The Mandalorian, we just did 4 days of Star Wars celebration. How are you both feeling?
Well, as we continue to pass this mic around, like this is just like our job now, and we're interviewing each other. Yes. It was so cool meeting so many we got recognized by a couple fans, which was wild and mind-blowing, and being around the cosplayers and interviewing people was definitely a highlight for me.
Great. They were great cosplayers. It was fun meeting people and just stumbling upon fans, friends, people who just love what we love, and just walking around. Great cosplay. It was so fun. I was taking more pictures on my phone than I ever had before. Just all the people walking around, and quite an experience. First time here in London, but it was surreal. A lot of fun.
Yeah, and for the folks who aren't, as I said, not watching the video, we're still in London. We're here at our Airbnb, where we're in this lovely living room here, which is why we're not in the Duel of the Ranks studio. In fact, it's a nice home, but we've decided to just sit on the floor because it's the easiest to pass around this one mic. We don't have this nice, beautiful setup, but we have each other. And as we heard at Star Wars Celebration this week more than once, when we're all together, that's when this show is special. So let's bring it. Let's have another special episode tonight. Amanda, what is Chapter 22? Not Chapter 6. What is Chapter 22 of The Mandalorian all about?
Din, Grogu, and Bo are searching for Axe Woves and his army of Mandalorians that Bo-Katan lost control over when she didn't return with the darksaber. This brings us to Plazir 15, a new planet with a uniquely futuristic culture where everyone gets to enjoy the pleasures of life while droids make up the working class and keep society moving. Axe Woves' team of Mandalorians are the Guns for Hire for Plazir 15, and before Bo and Din can try to convince them to work together to retake Mandalore, Captain Bombardier and the Duchess, played by Jack Black and Lizzo, request their help figuring out why certain droids are randomly malfunctioning. So that is the setup.
Good summary there. What the heck of an episode this was. It was fun. Like, out the gate, kind of a, just left turn on this, but it was so awesome and hilarious. Like, right when Jack Black and Lizzo show up on screen, I mean, we were watching this, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, what do they have to offer? I loved his name, Captain Bombardier, and it was just a fun couple to see them working together and just teasing kind of where they came from and how they're running this whole thing. I don't know. It was a pleasant surprise that was definitely a tone or a pace shift. I don't know. It did feel a little out of place, but I was mesmerized by that. And I don't know, kind of wanted to see what else the heck they were going to do.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I know I didn't even realize there was a whole lot of hate for this episode until we got to Celebration. And we started asking a lot of, other fans about some of their hot takes. And a lot of folks were saying, well, that last episode was pretty good. I'm like, that's a hot take. Like, that's fine. You enjoy it. But then you go on the internet and they're like, oh, people are starting to really throw hate on this show because of that one episode. Look, I gave it a 68.4%. I don't love this episode. That said, I enjoyed watching it. When Jack Black came on, I'm like, I don't care what he does in this episode. That's Jack Black. He can say and do whatever he wants, and I'm here for it. I don't know a whole lot about Lizzo, so no love, no hate. She's honestly, I didn't know until afterwards that was Lizzo. So that's all you need to know about me. Yeah, that very far under it. Like as far as Obi-Wan, like just being concaved by boulders from Vader. That's me, and that's Lizzo just throwing them at me. I just have no idea she's up there. But yeah, overall, I mean, look, it was a fun time. I did think the story was overall pretty weak. Like you're jumping into this mission and it's all right, here's this new side quest. We're going to go along and whatever. Like it was a fun time, but story and characters were not high for me.
Now, I feel totally the opposite. I went into this episode, even halfway through, I looked over to Jake and I was like, okay, I love this episode. It's going to get a really high marking for stories for me. And what I find interesting is the hate that we've seen on this episode so far. People are like, oh, it's just silly side quests. And that sounds like what everyone has said that they loved about season 1, that they miss about this season. So make up your mind. I loved that we got to see Bo and Din sort of like good cop, bad cop their way, while Grogu was like he's at daycare. He's, being taken care of. And they have to like solve this mystery, which kind of takes me back to Attack of the Clones, the type of investigative, and they both have a different approach to how they do this. So that helped build the characters for me, and that's why I gave that a 4. And the story gets a 4.5 for me because it was just so creative. I love that we get to see the battle droids back and a society that is so futuristic that everyone just doesn't have to work. They get to enjoy life and droids just keep it all moving. Like that is the dream. And if you may be familiar with like fully automated luxury space communism. And that is literally what we saw in here. Fully automated, droids do all the work. Luxury, you get to live in pleasure and hedonism, and everything is taken care of. And I think this was going to be society if Bernie Sanders had won the presidency. So that's my bold take.
All I would say to that is I don't want to side with Christopher Lloyd because obviously he was like the villain in this, but there is merit to say like when there's no adversity, there's no challenges, people lose creativity, people lose that desire to research, grow, adapt, and they're like, oh, we can recognize Mandalore as a system or a planet, whatever. It's like I'm sure the rest of the Republic's like, who are you? What do you do? What do you export? Oh, yeah, you're the planet that does nothing. Great, thanks. Go back to Pleasure Island over there.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, no, it's funny. So your story scores, Brody, on the story, you're 2.6, Amanda 4.5. I gave the story a 3.1. Looking at, after watching it, I said this was the most side quest feel of the episode of season 3, but that's not bad. And we like these things about Star Wars, and it's expected in a TV series. But the commentary on just kind of living lavishly with that, living in laziness, not having that productivity, is that good commentary on it. And yeah, I just love the hearkening back to Attack of the Clones, and just the technical aspects was my highest rank for this one. It was beautiful. It wasn't like clunky in that way at all. And it looked great. And it felt like Star Wars in that way. And it also, I'm a big Blade Runner fan. And so when you have that good cop, bad cop dynamic investigating something about like a runaway droid, I'm immediately thinking like Deckard investigating like runaway rogue replicants, and like they're supposed to retire or kill them. And then you have these questions about what does it mean to be human? How should we treat androids or AI? Like how should we treat these things? And we talk about droids a lot. And so like I like to view droids as a sort of a litmus test or a mirror to society on like, however we're building and treating droids, that's how we are clearly evaluating, or like that's a good barometer for the current state of humanity.
Well, that's funny because I specifically remember the two of you not advocating for droid rights. So does that mean?
Yeah, I still, and that's the other thing. I'm not advocating for droid rights. I'm more of like, it's putting a focus on, a society and their relationship with the droids that they're building. That's something to be monitored and checked, because it's like, what's the utility or purpose being imposed on those droids? And if it's like to just fully, if it's just to like overbear and fully serve humans to where we're now taking away from humans their challenge, their ingenuity to create and like be productive, then I think it's ultimately just hurting society or whatnot. And so it's like, it's very important to I view them, as like very important tools on a reflection of the current state of humanity. But
I thought this episode was interesting because of the droids and how they almost get like a new type of humanity to them, because we get to see an actual like droid bar, which is really cool. And Din and Bo show up trying to figure out why these droids are malfunctioning, and all of the droids just like stop and watch them. Yeah. And there's this point where, they're not believing the bartender for like spiking the oil that they're giving them, right? And the droid says something like, but we love humans. They created us, so we want to give back to them. And that really blew my mind. That gave a whole new understanding of, wow, droids are proud to be droids and to get to serve them. And that was just, I don't know, that was just something really new and exciting that I liked from this episode.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I thought that was touching too. Overall, I mean, it's funny to me because this episode, I constantly was thinking about Blade Runner, which I had never seen. Christian had talked up for forever, however many years we've been friends. And I saw it a few months ago for the first time. And here's, I guess, an early hot take. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was that good. But, Christian, I know.
it's a cult following.
Okay, look, I know you love it, so no knocks. You're entitled to like and love what you like. But here's my thing. Like, when there's that chase scene in the streets that's like very visual call out. But yeah, you have these beings that were created, and now we have to, like, the question is, are they sentient? Are they not? Do they deserve rights? Do we have the right to hit a button and control them and forcibly? I mean, the thing we're not talking about is they indicated they love humans, but now he can override that and force them to do what apparently they don't actually want to do. But is that not actually what they want to do, or are they just programmed right now to love humans? So there's this ethical debate that folks could have with that, and what's right versus wrong. Realistically, I mean, I think it's inconsequential as long as no human or alien sentient life is taken from these things. Hit the button, turn them all off, keep them all on. It really is irrelevant until there's some form of negative impact on society as a whole, whether that be through them murdering people or from people just flat out not working whatsoever, and your planet absolutely going to crap long term, just like WALL-E had that movie too. So what's the long-term negative impact of these droids? And I could care less how much they love humans for that reason.
Well, the long-term negative impact is that Christopher Lloyd's character kind of says this, that if they do shut down the droids, the city would collapse and burn because nobody would know how to like feed themselves. Yeah. Like it was, and that is also really interesting. It brings up the massive flaw of it all, which is like, if you're so dependent on technology, then you can't function without it. And guess what? Technology isn't always guaranteed to work. So,
you keep going.
No, I was just going to kind of start to jump into like the second part of this episode, which is after Bo and Din kind of come to the conclusion and find the reason behind the droid malfunctions, they get to now talk to Axe Woves, which we haven't seen since season 2.
Yeah, I didn't know if we did in the season.
Yeah,
I was glad to see him back.
same. And he's got a big party with him. And does one of you want to talk about what goes down there?
Sure, yeah. That was the thing that got me to give a more generous score to the story, was like that end cap, because obviously there's a fight. Din explains a bit more context to the group, and Bo gets the darksaber. And so, like, that is a significant moment that we can't just completely write off this episode as, like, filler, you know? But that's where, like, getting back to the droid thing, too, that I don't think any of that commentary on the technology is anything new, especially in science fiction. Like, we've had a lot of that fleshed out in other stuff, you know? So that's why I can't just give a good score just for that, because it wasn't really servicing the overall story of the show until Axe Wolves comes into play and Bo and all that. And so I appreciated the choreography fight scene between them. Like, it wasn't bad. Like, it was believable. There was brutality in there. There were knives to throats. It was a good fight that I could appreciate. And I'm like, I'm glad they went all for that. And he wasn't holding back punches. You know, she wasn't holding back kicks and jetpacks and bam. So I really liked that. And I hope we bring more brutality to the show. Like let's not, we talked about this on the Bad Batch too. Like, let's not hold back on stun guns or whatnot. Like, let's lean into this, you know? If you're going to fight for the darksaber, fight for the darksaber.
Well, I think there has been some of the discourse online about this episode is it feels like Bo doesn't earn the darksaber when it's kind of like handed to her, and that's almost disrespectful. But when we watched that happen in, what was that chapter, the second episode, I knew that was going to happen. I was like, okay, that's hers now. He lost it, and then he like clipped it back to his belt, and I was like, I don't think that's done yet. So I think not only did she kick his ass and win, but then like also on a technicality, she does own the darksaber. So I don't think it cheapened my appreciation for Bo-Katan's leadership abilities at all.
Yeah. No, I mean, it didn't cheapen anything for me. I mean, I loved, Christian, your take after this. We watched it together, and I looked at him like, what'd you think about that? And you're like, well, that was anti-climactic. And yeah, absolutely. And you're just kind of like, oh, that's how she got it. Cool. Like, to me, that was very much like, Martha, what did you say? I'm like, oh, okay, that's how you're gonna hand her the saber. All right, cool. Like, it feels like we're watching an NFL football game, and someone got, like, basically they got within field goal range off of some very crazy technicality play that were like, oh, okay, you won the game, but it's because someone blew a call that wasn't really. That's kind of bogus.
So to further on the sports analogy, even though they may have just inched in by a technicality, I think the greater context would be, though, like that team that won was still a way better team in terms of their history, their record, and the team that they were playing just happened to play well with them in that particular game, and it was just a fluke in that way. I think that's where you're getting at, Amanda, too. Like, context is everything. Sure, in that moment, it doesn't look great to just hand Bo-Katan that, but given the context, she's had many times she's already proven herself worthy of the darksaber.
Yeah.
And at any point after that interaction, when she saved Din, she could have been like, excuse me, I think I just saved you with this. And she didn't. Yeah. I think I remember the camera specifically like panning to her and her looking down at him, like latching it back onto his belt. So she has sort of passed all these tests where she actually is the worthy leader of Mandalore. And of course, there has been more discussion online about people not liking that this isn't so much about Din Djarin's story anymore. And to that, I say, Star Wars shows have not been shy to name things Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka. Let's not forget that this show is not called Din Djarin. it is called The Mandalorian. And I have always been an advocate for more of an anthology storytelling with this. I think Book of Boba Fett should have been season 2, and it could have still just been called The Mandalorian, and the story would have been exactly the same. And I think it's kind of a missed opportunity for that. And I think more people would be on board with Bo-Katan being the feature character this season if they would have set it up like that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. From a marketing standpoint and like then drumming up hype for the next season, like season 4, who's going to be the Mandalorian of season 4? Yeah, I think I'd be totally on board for that. The music I ranked right out of 3, just not bad, not great. It serviced the story because I don't really remember any outstanding moments with the music. But well, I don't know what other category do you two want to talk about?
I do have something.
There we go.
I do have something to say overall with I know, Amanda, you love this story. I personally love this director, Bryce Dallas Howard.
EDH.
And that's why I'm so disappointed in this episode because she is incredibly talented. And this felt like a Clone Wars episode to me. Like almost like
I'm saying these things and I'm like, they're good.
Clone Wars and Blade Runner have this episode. Like if they get married, if they had a child, it is this episode. Christian's like, yes. I'm like, look, and I gave it a 68%. All right, like that's a D plus. You're some schools will pass you. All right, but my point is, I think she can do. Like she's very talented, and Star Wars has a place for fun. This episode was a lot of fun. It had a lot of fan service, bringing back those droids, posing some ethical questions. And who doesn't love seeing Christopher Lloyd back? Just period. So I enjoyed this episode, but for me to give it a really high score, the bar's been set by things like Andor. I mean, we know what Star Wars is capable of. And I mean, again, being at Celebration and getting to hear from the director and cast and producers and seeing where they're pioneering Star Wars where it's never been before, from a quality perspective, it's not that good by comparison, but that doesn't mean it's not sweet. It's a great dessert, but it's not dinner.
Now, I do think some of the criticism you share on the episode is not directly Bryce Dallas Howard. Like, as the director, she didn't write it. So she takes the script and she makes it come to life. And I think she did an excellent job. And I think we should give Bryce Dallas Howard her own series, if anything.
I'm for that. I'm totally with that. They do have a lot of creative say in the episode. Now, it does have to go through Jon Favreau. It does have to go through Dave Filoni. I just think, yes, when it comes to things with the script, there are moments where people can do more with what they're given. And look, she didn't do a bad job. I'm saying that now. I'm not saying, look, she did a terrible job. I just think she could have done, or the whole crew, put it that way, could have done a better job. I'll put this even more on Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni than I will her. Fair enough. Good point.
Thank you. One section I want to talk about real quick, because I gave it a perfect 5 out of 5, is the immersive universe. So my total score for this episode was an 86%, which blows your guys' scores out of the water. For me, the immersive universe, getting this new planet, this new society, I love that Jack Black's character is like a reformed Imperial officer, captain, and is like repenting and like rethinking how life can be. I love that we even get like this new little croquet game, which whatever you would call it, like lacrosse, I don't know. But just little things like that is Star Wars. And I know that there's going to be tons of haters that are like, what is this dumb thing, blah, blah, blah. But that just builds the richness of the story. And immersive universe was 5 out of 5 for me. Let's also call out that folding chairs are canon. The Mandalorians had folding chairs in their thing. And I was like, wow, they have everything.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, like the whole dumb game point. I remember, in like the background of Attack of the Clones in that bar. They had like a sports bar kind of thing, and they had all these games, televised and whatnot. So it totally works. It works in Star Wars. I like that. It's fun. I was going back to, because we haven't talked about bingo in a while, and I was looking at the reference card. This episode, we came so close to crossing off another bingo on like 3 or 4 different predictions we had. Because you said, Brody, Christopher Lloyd is a droid, which he's very heavily featured in this droid episode. Another one we said was Axe Woves gets the axe, but he didn't. Close. What else was there? We had, there was another one. I was just reading it, but I don't think we got any bingos this one, but we came close, which was nice. We're not fully predicting a show. We're getting surprised as we go along, subverting some expectations there. But yeah, the overall, I don't know, do we already disclose the overall score? The cumulative 75.47%. That's not a bad score at all. And like, that's still that's the lowest episode for this season, right? Oh, yeah. And if that's your lowest score for a season this far in, that's showing it's a good season for us,
And we did go to a panel at Celebration, and Katie Sackhoff, Bo-Katan, was there. And first off, she's awesome, so shout out to her. Secondly, she was talking about, like, she saw the episode that came out this week, and she said, "Oh, that's it." She's like, "Oh my goodness, there's so much these next 2 episodes," and she was just teasing the audience there, was saying like, "Oh, like I get, kind of like, I know some folks, like, sure, maybe it felt like, oh, this is kind of slow." It's like, yeah, but that's because you want to slow down before you're gonna like go 90 in a second. Yes, 2 more to go. And it was kind of like we're decelerating before you just hit the full throttle. And that's what this episode was.
And lastly, before I forget, Sir Grogu, the Mandalorian Jedi child. Wow. He is just climbing those ranks so high. I can't wait. I'm my prediction for the next couple episodes, like you were saying, it's the penultimate is always like pretty much the crescendo, and then you'll just kind of like ride that high into the epilogue on the last one. But I mean, he's got that chainmail. He's got that like shield on him. He's going to have to take like a big bullet or like a freaking laser beam to his chest. And then he's just going to like Hulk it out, and that's what I want to see.
And technically, did you already say this? He was knighted. So he's Jedi Knight Grogu. That's how you get to become a Jedi Knight. You're Jedi. You get knighted for doing some service to a planet or a town. That's the little loophole we discovered here in Star Wars. So, yeah, that should be more of a thing.
I mean, to me, he's that undergrad in college that's got like 4 or 5 different majors, but he's never like finished any of them yet. But he's like a year away from all of it. Like, that's what Grogu is. That kid that's like, just finish one of them, man. He's Mandalorian, Jedi Padawan, knighted. Like, he could go up any political ladder he wants to now, but he's got to talk. Yeah. It's all contingent on speaking.
So before we move on to hot takes, was there anything else anyone wanted to say?
Oh, I did want to ask, because the other close prediction we had was we said B1 battle droid would say Roger, Roger. Mm-hmm. Did that happen in this episode? No. That's crazy. Yeah. Because if it didn't happen in this one, I could be wrong. I don't see it happening in the next 2.
I'll have to go back and see if it was set in the background.
This is the one it would have happened in. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll get it in the other 2.
All right. Well, with that concludes this segment of the show. Time for hot takes.
Don't be too proud of this podcast you've constructed. The ability to rank content is insignificant next to the power of an exceptional hot take.
All right, it is hot takes time. Looks like you got a take out the gate.
Yeah, my hot take is that I think The Mandalorian has been a better series as it has featured Bo-Katan rather than Din Djarin. I think she's a better leader and main character. And I don't mind that Din is kind of falling to the backside. So, yeah, I'm pro Bo.
Like, a part of me wants to say milk toast because, like, I feel like everyone should agree with that.
But they don't.
Which is crazy to me because I've always, from the jump, said that Din is not, like, interesting unless he's in the Book of Boba Fett. That's it. Like, he's never been that interesting to me. The only time in his entire arc where I really cared about him as a character was when he was on that farm planet. And we were like, settle down with that farm lady where you get the blue worms or fish or whatever it is. Like, stay there. Only time I've ever cared about him as a character. Since then, it's just like, he's just this video game guy who always adds new ships, adds new things. Gotta go and visit Pelimato to refuel. And this, like, feels so much like a video game. And then you have Bo-Katan, and you're like, wow, here's someone with purpose. Here's someone who can really emote with her face. Pedro Pascal, as much as we love him, has not had that ability to do that because his face has been covered this whole time. So unless something changes drastically, and honestly at this point I kind of hope that it does. I hope Pedro gets a chance to use his acting chops in this show, because by this point it's kind of ridiculous. They're kind of wasting him. He's very talented. So yes, I'm going to agree with you for that reason.
I do have to agree, and I think it is a hot take because the show, The Mandalorian, that title's tied to Din, especially initially at the get-go. And then giving it to someone else is kind of hard to do when you've, become acclimated to the show, to him, past few years. I don't know, and I'm fine with it. I think, a lot of people should agree with that. But it is a hot take because it's a kind of a title change or giveaway to someone else. And that's something that I don't think Star Wars should get in the habit of doing. It's like, stick to like the character with the show at hand or whatever, and like, let's not shoehorn Mando into Boba Fett's show or whatever, like doing stuff like that. But this, I think, is an interesting way of telling it. And I'm still like, Bo-Katan can take it all. I think there's still something big wrapped up for Din at the end to like still close the loop, and we can comfortably say Din has, hold on that.
Din's gonna get his little ranch, like on a secluded planet.
Widow lady.
With maybe the widow, and he's gonna have, what are they, the blurgs, like a farm of blurgs that he knows how to ride. Yeah, that's the life.
Yeah. Honestly, I think we all want that for Din Djarin at this point. Just hang it up. It's probably gonna happen. So, all right. Well, with that is a Roger. If we're not gonna get in that episode, we're gonna get it in this one. Roger. All right. I have a hot take too today. Look, I know there's a lot of folks who get really offended by this word, but for the most part, this episode is almost the truest definition of what it means to have a filler episode. For the most part, it was, if you didn't have that last 2 minutes in there, inconsequential in the grand scheme. And I'm sorry, but that opening scene was kind of, for me, pointless too, where you've got the space love between the two aliens and you have them come in. I'm like, yeah, it's like, why is this here? Who decided this, Bryce? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why do we have this like water alien space love that he's like, sorry, got to take you home to your parents. You ran away. And that's like, did we even need that scene, period? So anyway, yeah, a lot of filler for me.
See, we've had a lot of filler discussion on this show because people don't like that word, but we've also had conversations with some great guests of ours about you got to have filler if you're eating a sandwich. Like, you can't just have meat patty. Like, bleh. Like, filler is good. It makes everything taste better and enriches so much more. So I don't think just calling something filler anymore is necessarily a bad thing. I think if you're going to say it was bad up until the very end, then I would find that more of a hot take. But just saying it's filler, yeah, it was filler. And I loved it. Just like that Dr. Pershing episode was filler too, but it made the stakes in the universe so much more like interesting, and it grounds you in the story so much more, which is really important.
And I hear all of that. And that's a great point. I'm glad you added that to it because, no, as we talked about, I think it was Mandalorian who brought that point up with us. And absolutely fantastic point. For me, there's a big difference between that Dr. Pershing episode and this episode, where this episode feels like the filler or the filling of a ho-ho hostess. If you're in the UK or anyone else, it's basically just a very cheap cake you get at a gas station or any other convenience store. There's the difference between that kind of filling versus the creme de la creme. It's just the cream of the crop. It's the best stuff that you had with that Dr. Pershing episode.
But that reminds me of our conversation with Element 7, where sometimes you're hungry for a steak and sometimes you just want a hot dog. Sometimes a ho-ho hits the spot.
That was Darth Chaco.
Oh, that was Darth Chaco, yeah. Thanks for correcting.
Now knows, I'm always thinking about food, so I remember who said that.
Yeah, so sometimes a ho-ho just hits the spot.
It really is. I agree with everything you're saying, man. And filler isn't, I don't know, it doesn't trigger me. As you all know me, it doesn't. I enjoy watching it anytime. It's more of like considering now the utility of the episode. And yeah, after this one, it felt the most side quest of them all. So I'm confused as whether to agree and say it's a hot take for other people, because filler is a provocative term in the Star Wars community that I've learned. But to me, it doesn't ruffle my feathers. So from my perspective, I'll just say milquetoast, but I agree with you.
I'm also going to give you a milquetoast.
All this milquetoast, creme de la creme. Like my lactose intolerant self can't even handle this take either. So I guess we'll just play the clip.
You fool! Your take is milk toast.
Or maybe we should have said it's beans and toast because we are in London, and I guess beans and toast is actually a breakfast here. But milk toast, yeah, it still stands. Okay, Christian, what about your hot take?
My hot take. Season 3 is better off without this episode. And before everyone comes at me with pitchforks and knives, that's not saying I didn't love or enjoy this episode. I enjoy it. I'm glad it's here in Star Wars. I don't think you needed the characters of, Mando and Bo helping tell a commentary on droids and pop and society or whatnot. I think you can explore that very typical science fiction trope in Clone Wars or in something not as top A list. And I don't think you need to spend too much time on like as big of a show as Mando to give that kind of a spotlight. I think you could use other characters to do it. And to get back to Brody's point of like filler side quest, per the numbers, it brings down the average of this show. And I don't want it to distract from all of the awesome stuff that we've been raving about already in Mando Season 3. So if I have to come up with something provocative for this episode, it shouldn't be in Season 3 of Mando. It should be somewhere else in Star Wars.
It does ruffle my feathers. I am going to say it is a hot take, but I disagree with it because I loved everything that this episode brought to the story and the continued grounding of the universe that we're in. So I disagree.
Oh, so I should have also, I can respect that. I also, coupled with all the droid commentary, with the anti-climactic passing of the darksaber, I think we could have just done better with the writing of giving Bo-Katan, I don't know, making it more climactic, giving Bo a moment, like a more glorious moment, because I think she does deserve that. As you were saying, like she has that humility about her where she wasn't telling like, oh, that's mine now, Because of that, give her a climactic moment of that. So that's also, I think, where it could have been better for Mando Season 3.
Well, her climactic moment is coming up when she's going to ride the mythosaur. So I think we can be a little bit more patient for that type of climactic moment. What do you think, Brody?
Yeah, I mean, well, with that climactic moment, first off, I mean, she's going to be like Mandalore. First and foremost, if this all goes as according to plan, it, to me, seems like it's not going to go according to plan, though, because everything's just falling way too into place right now for that to happen. So I feel like something's going to get in the way. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Bo-Katan dies before she has the opportunity to make that happen at the hands of a Thrawn or a Moff Gideon or somewhere else, because it's seeming too easy. And if this is starting to get painted like the MCU, which it totally is as an endgame, I see is going to be the Tony Stark who dies so the rest of Mandalore can live, and that will be her greatest contribution. She will lead by doing more in death than she did in life. So yeah, overall, that's what I think there. And for that reason, what we see at the end here is so important to her story that unfortunately I can't just kick this episode out to the curb. I did enjoy it, but that's not why I'm doing it. It's just because the end is really important. So Christian, unfortunately, I have to downvote your take.
I got a bad feeling about this hot take.
All right. It is time for the last segment of the show, Trivia Time. Force Ghost Charlie, bring us in.
This is the way to Trivia Time!
All right, it is Trivia Time. Look, we're overseas. We're really tired. But the reality is we got to keep making this content because we love it. It's fun, and we love you for listening to our show. So we're still making it regardless of how much sleep we're on. But the trivia questions are not going to be that good. So here's mine for the night. Is Bo-Katan's hair this season and compared to Mando season 2? Is it longer? Is it shorter? Or is it the same length?
Longer.
I want to say longer.
I think so. That's mine. There you go. I think that's right. So anyway, Christian, your turn.
For all your premier trivia questions, tune into Duel the Ranks. I was just trying to look up one on the fly because I didn't know if we had one planned out. But you remember the female Quarren captain at the beginning, the love story? Do you know what her name was? Was it, oh gosh, I'll do multiple choice too. Was it A, Captain Shagar, B, Captain Purple, C, Captain Shugoth, or B, Captain, or D, yeah, you're right, or D, Captain Shishki?
I'm going to go with A.
I feel like it is A, but Christian has been, I didn't realize how like Italian he was until this trip. There's so many times where like we're looking at a bus or something leaves or we miss a moment by a second or we realize it's not the train we want to take. And he's just like, don't even look at him. And I'm just like, so Captain Shishki, like, I don't know. That's not even like that Italian. It's more like Czech or something. But the way you said it, I loved it. It made me so happy. And I want to see Captain Shishki, even if it's not real.
Or Captain Purple. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could ask him to repeat those questions and I can narrow down the answer way easier, but I'm not going to.
You totally could, because I don't remember the other made-up names. But no, it was C, Shugoth, or Shugoth. I don't remember how they pronounced it, sorry, in the episode, but I looked it up while we were doing a thing, and yeah, that was, that's her name. And a shout out to all my Italian friends out there. I'm not Italian, but I take great pride and honor in being,
Not Italian.
We've been going all over Europe, and we've learned a whole lot about where your ancestry's from. You are not Italian, but you certainly do exude that when watching The Sopranos.
I love the Italians. But that being said, any other final thoughts?
Well, I have a few. We can't go into this today, okay, because there was a lot to cover with Star Wars Celebration. We're going to talk about those later. We are also here, if you're watching the live stream of this show, you're noticing, why is this out at 5 p.m. Central Time instead of 6? Well, that's because, we had to pre-record this episode. We were, with Celebration, too crazy busy, but not to fear. There's another episode coming out live here in a few minutes on our YouTube channel. Back-to-back episodes. You've never seen that before. Don't know when you're going to see it again, of Duel of the Ranks. So be sure to stay on YouTube. Watch the next live episode. It's going to be a whole lot of fun as we break down the Mandalorian chapter 23. So don't go anywhere. And if you're on the podcast part of this whole thing, well, then just wait a second and then press play and go to that next episode. Download them both. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Now, before I let us both go, I would love to ask, while it's just fresh in your mind, it can change when you've had time to think about it, but what was your favorite part of Star Wars Celebration for folks who didn't go to London to check this out? What was it? I mean, we did a lot. We did a lot of panels. We went up to people and we did some fun videos asking fans for their own hot takes, their favorite or the best movies, the best shows. We learned a lot about a community. Folks, as you pointed out earlier, Amanda, folks recognized us. What was your favorite part of this whole thing?
Getting recognized was definitely a high point. But my favorite thing was really getting to hear from the actors and the crew that go into putting on these shows and movies that we love so much. Like, we get to see and hear from the directors and actors a lot, but getting to hear from the costumes and art and the puppeteers and the creatures, like the whole departments that put on those things that make Star Wars so special. I love giving the shout outs and the credit to those people for all of their amazing talents. So that made me feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
I love it. Speaking of warm and fuzzy ones, I just had a moment when we were all together, like kind of doing our thing at Star Wars Celebration. It was just really fun, and I felt grateful to be a part of something like that. I've always wanted to go to Celebration growing up, and I would always just watch it online, and it was just fun to watch. Never thought I would be able to go anytime soon, but going with you two, it was just special, and it was fun to enjoy it with you all. A second high part for me was growing up, or like watching the live stage, just thinking how amazing it would be to eventually get there. The minute I saw that live stage here, I was like, I'm going right over there. Went, and right when we walked in, saw Mads Mikkelsen, and they're talking about like Indiana Jones. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I just camped at that live stage. You and I camped out there, and like group after group, we saw celebrities. I was within just throwing distance of just like seeing them right then and there. That was amazing and special. And that to me was iconic Celebration that I didn't think I would, get to experience. So that's a big highlight.
No, I love that. And speaking to the celebrities, it was kind of shocking out the gate to see Mads and be within feet. And I mean, in this week, I bumped into Carl Weathers and shook his hand and unintentionally told him my dad was dead, which he's not dead. And that was an accident. But then Carl had to go. So had to call my dad and make sure he was alive. Didn't speak anything to existence there. So that's a crazy story for another day. But then meeting Andy Serkis and like the lovely human that he is, and asking him, hey, can we film this and have a Gollum conversation? And he went with it. And I was like, I've been doing this since like I was so young, and here we are speaking in Gollum. It was so wild, so crazy. And meeting Hayden Christensen, how awesome he was with my own kiddo. And it's just weird. It's like, wow, like, those movies were so important to me, and here you are, like, just really engaging with my son. It was just so touching. But none of those things mattered to me as much as when we were all three interviewing people. And Christian, you said this yourself, so I'm just piggybacking off your point here. But when we were out, and people have told us more than once, when one of you three are gone, we had a fan tell us that this week, when one of you three are gone, it shows. And I was like, wow, that meant a lot to me. And someone else said that we all know, so this week said, no offense to any other co-hosts who've joined in, but you three have something. And, it does matter and it does feel good when people tell you that. But when we were randomly interviewing people, I didn't even really get that we have a certain energy like that until people started circling around us and people started taking pictures of us and people started recording it and people wanted to know more about our show. And that's where I was like, okay, this unit we have, this is different. And I've thought that for a long time. I didn't see anyone else there doing what we were doing. And when you talk to people about their shows, this is something special. And knowing that I get to be a part of this with you two, there's of any of the emotional moments of the show, that's the one where I was just like, wow. I mean, there was a moment where Christian was killing it on one. There was a moment where Amanda was killing it. And I just almost brought a tear to my eye with both of those. I was like, this is special. And I've never seen that with any podcast I've produced in my lifetime. So thank you both for coming with me. Thank you, Luke, for making us come out and do this crazy thing. Go check out the Podwins podcast, and they did it. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you both for making this experience so special for me.
Thank you.
You're breaking my heart. And with that, we're glad you joined us on this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks. Be sure to tune in next time for when we're dealing out the numbers.
Yeah, here in a second. So don't go anywhere. It's Thursday night!